What if I told you that some of the most famous stories ever told, the tales of gods like Zeus, heroes like Achilles, and legendary journeys like Odysseus's decade-long voyage home, might have been written by someone who may have never even existed? Yes, the name we've celebrated for thousands of years could be nothing more than a mask hiding the truth behind the world's greatest epics.
Here's the question I want you to think about. Is this figure real? A solitary genius walking the hills of ancient Greece, shaping civilizations with words? Or is it purely a fictional construct, a symbol created to give shape to stories that belong to countless anonymous storytellers? And most importantly, who exactly is this mysterious author? Could you guess? Or will the answer surprise you?
By the end of this journey, we'll reveal the identity behind these legendary epics. But until then, every line, every battle, every journey you hear about should make you question what you know about history, genius, and storytelling itself. Is this a man, a myth, or something far more mysterious? Keep your mind open and your guesses ready, because the answer may change everything you thought you knew. Long before libraries, before pens carved into parchment, before history decided who deserved a legacy, there were stories. Not simple stories, tales of gods scheming like humans, men fighting with godlike fury, and journeys so vast they spanned continents and lifetimes. These stories existed without signatures, without dates, without proof of a single mind behind them. They floated through time, haunting the imagination, demanding recognition, yet hiding their creator in plain sight.
Imagine this: texts that shaped civilizations, texts that influenced the way nations thought about heroism, war, morality, even destiny. But no one can definitively say who wrote them. Some insist there was one solitary genius walking the hills of ancient Greece, reciting verses that would echo for thousands of years. Others claim these stories were collective creations, molded over generations, refined by countless voices until someone finally wrote them down. And history, desperate for clarity, attached a single name. But here's the unsettling truth. That name may never have belonged to a real person at all. And the evidence, or rather the lack of it, is striking. No diaries, no letters, no statues, nothing that can tie these stories to a flesh and blood human being. Only fragments of text, copied and recopied by scribes who may have altered, enhanced, or reshaped the narratives to suit their own agendas. Every line you read is layered with centuries of interpretation. Are we honoring a genius? or worshipping a shadow, a mask created to satisfy our need for origins, heroes, and explanations.
The radical voices in academia are growing louder. They suggest that attributing these epics to a single figure was a deliberate act of control. A way to simplify the chaos of oral tradition, to give people someone to argue with, admire, or idolize. If these stories had remained anonymous, we might never have agreed on what constituted greatness, what counted as genius, or even what history chose to remember. Could it be that one of the most influential authors in Western civilization never truly existed, and we've been debating a ghost for centuries?
And yet, even in the absence of certainty, the power of these stories cannot be denied. They survived empires, wars, and centuries of neglect. They shaped literature, art, and philosophy. They continue to inspire films, books, and even the way we imagine heroism. But here's the question that will linger in your mind long after this episode. If the man behind them was never real, what does that mean for our understanding of history, creativity, and genius? Are we celebrating a person or a myth? And if it's the latter, how much of what we call culture is built on stories crafted not by men, but by ideas that refused to die? Centuries passed, yet the stories persisted, not just surviving, but thriving. These weren't mere tales, they were blueprints for human ambition, reflections of our fears, and mirrors of our values. Entire generations read, memorized, and performed them, each retelling adding weight, each interpretation carving deeper grooves into the cultural consciousness. They became more than literature. They became law, ideology, and the unseen architecture of thought. And yet, the question that haunts every scholar, poet, and historian remains: how much of this can be credited to a single mind? And how much is the product of collective imagination?
Consider this. We still quote lines as if a man of flesh and blood spoke them, as if we could understand the mind that conceived Achilles' rage or Odysseus' cunning. But perhaps that mind never existed. Imagine a world where the most influential author in history is a fabrication, a vessel for centuries of anonymous voices. What does that say about genius, about history, about the narratives we cling to so desperately? If these epics were meant to inspire and guide humanity, does it matter if they came from one person, or does the power lie solely in the words themselves, independent of the human behind them?
Even the epic themes are controversial. War, honor, betrayal, loyalty, concepts we hold sacred, are examined, distorted, and immortalized in ways that suggest profound psychological insight. Some argue that no single person could have possessed such a comprehensive understanding of human nature at a time when literacy was limited and knowledge was oral, scattered, and fragile.
The audacity of claiming one individual authored them strains credibility. Could it be that these stories are not reflections of genius, but artifacts of cultural consensus? And if so, who decides which stories survive and which are forgotten when the authors are invisible?
And the debate doesn't stop there. Some modern thinkers claim that attaching a single name to these epics was an early exercise in intellectual control. By pointing to a mastermind, history could channel admiration, criticism, and political power toward one target. A nameless work would be chaotic, ungovernable. By personifying it, civilization created a convenient scapegoat and an idol at once. Imagine the audacity. For thousands of years, societies have structured debates, wars of interpretation, and educational curricula around someone who may never have existed. The very pillars of Western literary tradition might be built on illusion, and we have been arguing about ghosts for centuries. And yet, the persistence of these stories is undeniable. They refuse to die. They adapt, survive, and infiltrate new media. Films, novels, philosophy, even political rhetoric. But here's the final provocation for this chapter. If the author was a myth, what are we really celebrating? The man or the idea? And if the idea is stronger than any man, could it be that humanity has been worshipping a concept while chasing a shadow? The real answer is buried in the words, in the echoes that refuse to fade, daring us to trace the origins, to challenge what we know, and to confront the uncomfortable possibility that some truths are deliberately unsolvable. For centuries, we have revered a name as a symbol of unmatched genius, a solitary figure wandering the ancient landscapes, supposedly crafting epics that would define civilization itself. But what if that genius never walked the earth? What if the very cornerstone of Western literature, the supposed brain behind Achilles' fury, Hector's honor, and Odysseus' cunning, was never a person at all, but a convenient story crafted by history to make chaos seem orderly? This isn't just speculation. It's a provocation to everything we thought we knew about authorship, creativity, and intellectual legacy. Consider the audacity of attributing an entire cultural framework to one mind. The epics contain layers upon layers of detail: political intrigue, nuanced psychology, cultural norms, and complex moral dilemmas. Yet literacy was scarce, knowledge fragmented, and oral traditions dominated. Could a single individual possibly memorize, synthesize, and transmit such a vast web of human experience without the support of generations of storytellers? Scholars who question this are often dismissed, but the truth is unavoidable. The plausibility of one man holding this intellectual empire in his head strains the boundaries of reality itself. Perhaps genius is not always human.
Perhaps it is an echo of collective consciousness, polished and anonymized by the scribes and storytellers of ancient times.
Then there's the power of mythology itself. By attaching a name to these epics, civilizations could debate, admire, and even manipulate culture. A nameless story is dangerous. It cannot be criticized. It cannot be celebrated in full, and it cannot be wielded as a tool of intellectual authority. By creating a figurehead, real or imagined, society imposed structure, a focal point for adoration and critique. And here lies the controversy. For thousands of years, people have argued over interpretations, stylistic choices, and historical implications of works that may never have had an original author. If the genius was a fabrication, then all that argumentation, all that scholarship, might be an elaborate dance with a ghost. And yet, the power of these epics persists, undeniable and unyielding. They infiltrate films, novels, philosophy, and even modern politics. Leaders quote lines, educators teach them, and millions identify with the heroes as if they were real. But the question gnaws. Are we celebrating the genius of one person or the genius of an idea that refuses to be contained? If the author never existed, the works become a mirror reflecting humanity's obsession with certainty, authority, and the myth of singular brilliance. In that sense, the genius is not missing. It never was missing because it was never human to begin with.
The final unsettling thought lingers in the mind like a shadow. What if the very foundation of literature, the supposed epitome of human intellect, rests not on flesh and blood, but on a name created to give stories a face, to give audiences a figure to argue with, to worship, or to dismiss? If this is true, we have spent millennia chasing a phantom, debating its choices, and attributing to it the power of shaping civilizations. And yet, the stories themselves refuse to die. They continue to haunt, inspire, and provoke. The question is no longer who wrote them, but whether we can ever confront the unsettling possibility that history, literature, and genius are far more mysterious and far more human than we are willing to admit.
The more time passes, the more powerful the influence of these stories becomes. They did not merely entertain, they dictated values, inspired empires, and sculpted the moral imagination of countless generations. Yet what is astonishing and deeply unsettling is that the person credited with this legacy remains shrouded in mystery. No proof of existence, no letters, no biographies, no monuments carved in stone. And still, their supposed genius is debated, taught, and revered. Could it be that the greatest literary legacy in human history was built not by a man, but by an idea that refuses to die?
Consider the audacity of this claim. Millions across centuries have identified with heroes they cannot meet, empathized with journeys they cannot walk, and admired virtues whose author may never have lived. Education systems, literature courses, philosophical debates all hinge on these texts as if they were tied to a real human experience. Yet every line is a ghost, every story a shadow. Scholars argue, schools propagate, critics dissect, but the foundational question persists. If the author was never real, then the legacy we celebrate may belong not to flesh and blood, but to a collective imagination deliberately anonymized, waiting to be discovered or forever remain lost.
And here's the provocative part. The influence of these epics is not neutral. They shape morality, guide politics, even inform leadership decisions. Generals have marched troops inspired by Achilles' valor. Politicians have quoted Odysseus' cunning to justify strategies. We assume the mind behind these works imbued them with intention, design, genius. But what if the true power lies in their anonymity? A nameless story can speak to anyone, unbound by the flaws or biases of a single author. Perhaps these stories endure precisely because no one claims them, because their power is untethered, wild, frighteningly uncontrollable.
Yet the debate remains fiery and unresolved. Some insist the author existed, a solitary genius crafting verses that would echo for millennia. Others argue the epics were forged by generations of storytellers, anonymous artisans whose identities vanished into time. This tension fuels academic disputes, literary rivalries, cultural controversies. Each year, new research emerges attempting to locate fingerprints of a human hand, but every theory meets skepticism because the text resists certainty. These stories rebel against authorship itself. They challenge our need for names, for faces, for origins. They are a puzzle we may never solve.
And now, as you sit with these questions, one final chilling thought remains. The legacy you've admired, debated, even idolized may not belong to a man at all. It belongs to something far more dangerous and far more enduring than any individual. The collective imagination of an entire civilization, preserved in stories that refuse to die. The epics, the heroes, the gods, the moral dilemmas, they survive because they are untethered, immortal, and deliberately unclaimed. And here's the question that will haunt you until the final reveal. If the author never existed, then who or what should we truly be celebrating? After centuries of debate, speculation, and endless scholarly arguments, the truth finally emerges, or at least as close to the truth as history allows. the voice behind the epics, the figure who shaped Achilles' rage, Odysseus's cunning, and the foundation of Western storytelling, was a man we call Homer. But here's the twist. The name itself might have been more myth than man. Was Homer a single person wandering ancient Greece, reciting lines that would outlive empires? Or was Homer simply a placeholder, a convenient mask for generations of anonymous storytellers? The answer is as elusive as the sea Odysseus sailed, tantalizing, yet frustratingly unreachable.
What we do know is this: whoever or whatever Homer was, the impact is undeniable. These stories refused to die, refused to be confined, refused to be owned. They shaped literature, philosophy, and culture in ways that no single individual could ever fully control. Perhaps the greatest genius of all time is not a man, but the stories themselves, timeless, untamed, deliberately unclaimed. By attributing them to one name, we create debates, heroes, villains, scholars, but the power remains with the epics, not the author. The shadow of Homer lingers not in a grave or a city, but in every word that continues to provoke, inspire, and challenge us.
And now, the real question for you, the audience, remains: does it matter if Homer was real? Or is the debate itself the point? Are we celebrating a man, a myth, or the enduring power of human imagination? The answer is yours to decide. But one thing is certain: as long as we argue, interpret, and retell these stories, Homer, real, imagined, or somewhere in between, will never truly be gone. And perhaps that's the most daring plot twist of all, that the author who changed the world may never have existed, leaving us forever questioning, forever debating, forever chasing a shadow that refuses to be caught.